Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Yet another episode of Crushing Fantasy Football. I am Bryce Lockridge, your host of the show. All right, guys, football things are finally happening again. We had Aaron Rodgers go over to the Jets yesterday. I know a lot of us were excited to see this happen because it's the first major move of the offseason. And we also have the NFL draft coming up in just a few days. So I'm super excited. I know you guys are as well. So today, I have a video for you guys. This is a very important one, guys. I'm going to be talking to you about players that I want you to avoid this coming season in the 2023 fantasy football draft. And it's just as important to know who to avoid as it is to know who to draft. So I want to make sure that you guys do not make the mistake of drafting these guys. So I'm going to start right here with the first player on my list, Devo Samuel. Now, Devo Samuel last year only had 396 air yards, which was 95th in the NFL. This dude was not seeing any deep targets. He only had, a very small number of deep targets for the entire season. They just weren't throwing him the ball down the field. He only had 56 receptions. This is not very good for someone that was drafted very high in the draft last year, and he only had 12 red zone targets, which is 36 in the NFL. Now, there are several reasons for his decline in production. One, Brandon Ayuk's target share went up pretty significantly. Two, they finally freed George Kittle to actually be a pass-catching tight end again and not just using him for only blocking purposes. And three, the 49ers just haven't really had a gunslinging kind of quarterback in a while. Jimmy G is not the kind of quarterback that was throwing a lot of passes downfield. Now, we don't have to worry about him. He's gone now. But now the quarterback's probably going to be Brock Purdy. He's not really a gunslinging kind of quarterback as well with any sort of tremendous arm talent. So the deep targets probably are not going to be there for Devo Samuel yet again this year. The red zone targets are probably not going to be that high because red zone opportunities are absolutely dominated by Christian McCaffrey no matter where he goes. And speaking of Christian McCaffrey is taking away Devo Samuel's ability to get rushing touchdowns and rushing production out of the backfield. So because of the changes in the offense and the way this offense is built now, it's just not built around Devo Samuel so much like it was 2 years ago when he was super dominant. So I would just avoid him this year altogether. Next player on my list is going to be Cam Akers. Guys, Cam Akers, 4.2 yards a carry this past year. The efficiency wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't good. A little bit under average as far as the yards per carry efficiency. He only had 8 breakaway runs, which is, runs of 15 yards or more. This was 24th in the NFL. Not impressive. Didn't display a whole lot of big playability, and only had 2.53 yards created, which was 36 in the NFL. Yards created are, how many yards you run the ball for after first contact and after what the offensive line creates for you. So outside of what the offensive line was creating for Cam Akers, he wasn't really running the ball for, a whole lot, after first contact. And what we really got to keep in mind is that although we saw Cam Akers be pretty dominant in the last 4 or 5 games of the season, this team was not trying to win at that point. So they kind of changed their offensive style because Cooper Kupp was out. Matt Stafford had the neck injury and everything like that. So it, for a short period of time, completely flipped the script and became a not pass-happy offense. But when Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp come back at 100% this year, the offense is going to run the same way that it was the past year and a half before Cooper Kupp got hurt. They're going to be force-feeding Cooper Kupp the ball. This is going to be one of the most pass-happy offenses in the NFL. They feed their wide receivers, especially Cooper Kupp, crazy amounts of targets, and it's just not an offense that's built around the run. So I really don't like Cam Akers this coming season. He only dominated at the end of last year because all the other playmakers on the team were hurt. So don't fall into this trap. Cam Akers is going to be absolutely terrible. He's being way overdrafted, just like he was last year. Avoid him altogether. Next player on my list is going to be Terry McLaurin. Now, Terry McLaurin, despite having, tremendous talent, is a guy who he just underperforms every year, right? Like, he only had 5 touchdowns last year. And this ties him for his record in his career. He's been in the NFL for 3 seasons, has not had a season where he's eclipsed more than 5 touchdowns. Jahan Dotson comes into his first season on the team and has 7. Okay, so granted, Terry McLaurin had, more yardage numbers and just better overall numbers than Jahan Dotson. But Jahan Dotson's a rookie. You got to expect his target share to go up significantly this coming season. And Terry McLaurin only had a 22.6% team target share this past year. So considering the fact that Jahan Dotson's target share is going to go up in his next season because he's a first-round pick, and we always see first-round pick wide receivers have their target share go up significantly when they come into their second year, there's a chance that Terry McLaurin's overall target share is even less this coming season. So the target share isn't significant enough. All this dude really possesses is elite talent. Okay, he doesn't have elite opportunity share. He doesn't play in a great offense. He doesn't have touchdown upside. Outside of just being an extremely talented wide receiver, this dude just doesn't really offer that much for fantasy. So avoid him altogether. Next player on my list is going to be Christian Kirk. Now, I really don't have problems with Christian Kirk himself as much as I do problems with why in the world is Calvin Ridley not being drafted ahead of him? Right? Calvin Ridley is by far and away the better receiver. They're not even in the same universe. Now, obviously, the Jaguars signed Christian Kirk to a massive contract, but even with the massive contract, he only had a 23.2% team target share this past season. He had 24 deep targets, which was by far the most encouraging statistic for Christian Kirk, is they were slinging him the ball down the field. And I think they'll give him a fair share of deep targets this coming season as well. But guess who's going to take away from his deep targets? Calvin Ridley, right? So we know that Calvin Ridley is going to be the big play wide receiver for the team. They're going to target him downfield more so than they do Christian Kirk. So Calvin Ridley is going to receive a ton of targets in this offense. He's by far and away the better wide receiver as far as a pure talent standpoint is concerned. We saw that in his last full season. He had over 1,300 receiving yards. He led the league in so many vital wide receiver statistics in his last full season in the NFL. And the only reason that people aren't drafting him is because they haven't seen him play in a while. I talk about this on my channel all the time. Recency bias is ridiculous. The only reason people aren't drafting Calvin Ridley ahead of Christian Kirk is because they've simply forgot about him, which makes no sense. But trust me, people do it. They haven't seen him play a full season in quite some time, so they just sort of write him off, which is absolutely stupid. And that is why Calvin Ridley is quite possibly the biggest steal in the entire draft this year. I still have Deshaun Watson as my biggest steal in the entire draft, but Calvin Ridley is probably second right after him. This dude's value is absolutely insane. And because of this, I expect him to absolutely smother Christian Kirk as far as fantasy production. So I would avoid Christian Kirk at all costs because Calvin Ridley is going to ruin him. Next player on my list is going to be T. Higgins. This is the last player I have here. Now, this is a guy who, when Jamar Chase returned to the team last year, after, in week 13, right? For the rest of the season, T. Higgins only had a 20% team target share. This is bad, all right? Only a 20% team target share. He only had an 18.6% target share from a season-long standpoint. This is terrible target share percentage. He only saw 12 red zone targets, which is 36 in the NFL. And the biggest reason for this is because Jamar Chase is a red zone target hog. Jamar Chase was second in the league in red zone targets despite missing 5 games last year. So all the red zone targets go to Jamar Chase. I couldn't tell you why. If I'm the coach of the team and I have a 6'4" T. Higgins, I'm going to pepper him with targets in the red zone. But at the same time, Jamar Chase is arguably the most talented wide receiver in the NFL. So naturally, he's going to be peppered with red zone targets as well. And when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, Jamar Chase is just taking all the production away from T. Higgins. T. Higgins is a guy that you're going to have to take in the second or third round. And considering the fact that all of his target share numbers are down, his red zone targets are down, and he's just a player that is second fiddle to Jamar Chase. It's not even close to being a 1A, 1B situation. He is the second wide receiver in the offense. And, in today's NFL, teams have a tendency of absolutely peppering their number one wide receiver and kind of neglecting everybody else. T. Higgins is going to be the guy that's neglected this past season. He is absolutely and utterly not worth a pick in the second or third round. Avoid him altogether. All right, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. Catch you later.